As much as I'm getting. Well, good afternoon or good evening now, everybody. How's that sound? Maybe. Okay. Yeah, if you put it close like this, then we'll get that. Okay. So I just want to welcome everybody to East End Books. Another beautiful evening. We got lucky again today with the weather. For people watching now, but mostly the people that will be watching this on our YouTube channel. Right behind us is the beautiful new town park, Henry Wharf Park, that the town has built. Absolutely gorgeous, as you can see. It has a couple of features that are really important. I think this town was forward thinking, and one of which is it really does have full handicap access, and also to families who have kids in strollers, because as you can see, the it's paved, so it's like little pebbles, but it's smooth. So you're not going through rocks or sand like you do on the side here of our property here. So it's fantastic. You can actually use it, and you can actually get to the ramps, because there's ramps that get you to the town beach down there. Then you'll also can see and will hear the fancy European toilet. It's one of the only 3 locations on the East End for public bathrooms. It's this one, the Public Library, and Ptown Art Museum. So it's important to know if you're coming here. Tonight is gallery night, so you'll have that restroom available if you come down. Okay, so upcoming events. You can see all of our events on our website, and that website will tell you what events are here at East End Books and what our events are at our new store at East End Books Boston Seaport. We're now on Pier 4 next to the ICA Museum. Next event that we are doing here is Monday. It's Campfire Stories. That's going to be Cape Cod Campfire Stories. A lot of fun. We've got the 2 editors and several of the contributors, including Liz Bradfield, who I love, many of you know, will be here. The next event that we're doing is Sunday. It's the novel Gulf with the filmmaker and author Mo Ogrodnik. That'll be at the Provincetown Arts Society, and you can go into their website for ticketing information about that. If you are in town next Saturday, the 15th of August, I'm co-chairing along with resident Neil Jacobs here in town an event at the Commons, and this is going to benefit the Boston-based Theater Offensive. This is a group that's been doing theater across Boston for years, of Huntington and other places. I'm sharing their capital campaign to help build their first theater in the Fenway. This is a company available to everybody, but it's emphasizing, and more importantly now than ever, presenting opportunities for Black and brown, trans, and queer playwrights. So if you want to learn more, there's going to be food by bespoke soirees, entertainment, music at the Commons. If you missed that, but you're in the greater Boston area, December 7th, the actress and author Christy Cashman and I are also doing an event there at the Quinn, the private club that Ken Folk is the creative director of. We're doing an event at the new restaurant he's created called Lunasol, which is like being kind of in San Paulo. It's quite lovely. Okay, so Provincetown Arts Press is such a special, wonderful organization, historical organization who has really upped the game in the past few years in terms of producing new books, including the beautiful new book that we're here about, Salt House. But they also did a really good thing. The town had been in charge of selling a phenomenal book that my friend David Dunlap did, Building Provincetown, and then the town decided that it was they're not in the publishing business. They didn't want to do that anymore. So it wasn't available for a while and couldn't get other presses on to take it on. And Provincetown Arts Press did take it on. Not only did they take it on and did very well with it, but then maybe a year ago or not too long ago, they agreed to produce the hardback edition of that book, which so many people have been asking for. So we've got that in there as well. And then they'll be telling you about the magazine, some other things that are happening, but it's just such a special organization. And there were some people in yesterday who were reminiscing about Chris Busa, and the fact that he used to come. I don't know how he could do it, because I can't lift things too heavy, and these boxes, I gotta open them up and take books and take magazines out. He'd walk in with one box on one arm and one on the other. These heavy, these Provincetown Art Magazine boxes. I don't know how he did it. So we miss you, Chris, and so we're thinking about you tonight. So they were going to be telling you all about this, the novel, the design, how they came up with this. On our website, we have full information about the key people involved with the press and putting this book together, so I won't go through all of that. The only thing I'll say is that, before I turn it over to our wonderful duo here, is that this novel, Salt House, is a slightly fictionalized account of Hazel Hawthorne's life at the dunes and living amongst other artists, touching upon various topics, including self-actualization, a woman's place in a nuclear family, feminism, friendship, and environmentalism. The novel was controversial at the time of its release due to its more progressive subject matter compared to the attitudes of the era, and it was actively hidden in the back of library shelves in local Provincetown and never republished after its initial printing. So you're in for a really treat tonight, and if you haven't seen the book already, you'll see it afterwards. Just take a look at it, including the beautiful sleeves that are in there. That's so unusual for paperback. But without further ado, I'm sorry you have to share a mic, but I'm going to give it to Livia.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having us here. Can people hear me? Am I holding the mic okay? Great. So my name is Livia Tenzer, and I've been involved with Provincetown Arts Press for about 5 years. And during that time, I became sort of the head of our book committee. The press just yesterday celebrated its 40th anniversary. It was founded by Chris Busa, whom Jeff mentioned, and we're just very proud to have been part of Provincetown for 40 years. A big part of what the press does is publish an annual magazine. I'm holding up our summer 2025 issue. And our mission with the magazine and the books we publish is to create a permanent record of the arts community here in Provincetown. Its ongoing life and also its heritage. And republishing this book, bringing out a new edition after its original appearance in 1934, it had not been republished, is part of that mission, to ensure that the great writers and artists of Provincetown are known and are and that their work can still circulate. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the book came into being, but before I even do that, I just want to say I'm very honored to be here with Allison Bass-Riccio, who became a partner in all of the work to bring this book into being. For those of you who've worked in publishing, you know it takes a village, or maybe more than a village, to bring a book into print. And without her partnership, we couldn't have done it. Among other things, Allison provided the beautiful afterword in the book, which you'll be hearing more about. So how did this book come back into print? Well, at the book committee, we were thinking about Provincetown authors, books about Provincetown, Provincetown history, and I got to thinking, partly based on my own history in publishing, that there must be some older books by Provincetown authors that maybe people aren't aware of anymore. And some of that, I'll just mention, comes from, I worked for about 5 years at a place in New York called the Feminist Press. What the Feminist Press does, largely, is, or it did then, find work by women that had been published, but often had fallen out of print and was less well known than it should be. We take it for granted now that women authors are very popular, very successful. It wasn't always easy for women to get published and then to get attention and acclaim when they were published. So with that in mind, I was at the Provincetown Public Library. Maybe some of you have been there and know the little room on the second floor called the Cape Cod room. I started looking through books there, trying to find something that was valid to republish. and I was picking up books, and I think from my training at the Feminist Press, I developed a little bit of a sense of what works when you republish a book. It has to speak to readers today. So I was picking up books and finding things that, well, the language is a bit stilted and old-fashioned. The story seems very sentimental, won't work for today's readers. And then I came to Hazel Hawthorne, and I picked up Salt House and started to read it, and I was like a little bit blown away, actually. So I thought, this reads so fresh, so modern, and the more I read into the book, I realized it was a story of a woman kind of claiming her independence, and I thought, wow, this is really good. I have to read the whole book. I did, and I became convinced that it deserved to be back in print. As mentioned, bringing something into print is a big project, and I had to start doing research and follow breadcrumbs online, which eventually brought me to Allison, who is the steward of the Hazel Hawthorne archive, and we began collaborating. Yes, and I won't go into all the details, but through hard work together, we brought this book into being, also with the support of people at the press, like our designer Irene Lipton, who created the beautiful cover, and just the overall beautiful package that this book is. Yes. So briefly, and you'll learn more about Hazel if you do purchase the book. There's a preface that talks about her and more information in the afterword. But briefly, Hazel was born in 1901 and lived until 2000. She was a New Englander and came to Provincetown early in her life, in her teens, and then came back in the 20s, and for the first time stayed out on the dunes. She fell in love with the dunes of Provincetown, and ultimately, much later in life, owned 2 dune shacks, which still exist today and are managed by the Peaked Hill Trust. You may be familiar with that nonprofit organization that manages several dune shacks. And fittingly, this novel is set largely on the dunes of Provincetown, in the dune shacks. It may be the only novel that is set there, so it's really very unique in that way. And I'm gonna read a little bit from the novel. Then Allison will read from her afterward. So I want to set up the novel just a little in case you haven't read it. It is about a young woman protagonist whose name is Judith. She, at the start of the book, she arrives in Provincetown. Now, this is fictionalized, so in the book, Provincetown has a different name. She calls it Blackwall, but it's unmistakably Provincetown. All the landmarks are named in the book. And she heads out to the dunes. She lives out on the dunes with a cast of Bohemian characters like you would not believe. This is around 1930. So part of the revelation of the book is just that this was already going on here in 1930. At the outset of the book, she's waiting for her lover, Philip, to come reunite with her. He's an artist and he's traveling out west. And I'll briefly explain that he doesn't show up when he's expected. And so she has to kind of reinvent her plans, and ultimately she takes another lover. Philip does come back, though there's a lot of back and forth between her relationships in the book. So with that said, I hope that's enough of a lead-in. I'm going to try to channel Hazel Hawthorne.
Livia, do you want me to hold the microphone for you?
I think I'm going to be okay. Yeah. Okay, so, oh wait, whoops. Oh, briefly, I also just want to mention the book is written as if it were Judith's journal entries. So I'm going to read part of an entry from June 8th. The entries cover one long summer. Yesterday in Blackwall, Rake found a check at the post office, something that he gets each month from his father's small estate. Rake is her Provincetown boyfriend. And I had a letter from Philip. That's the lover she's waiting for. He cannot come here. He has no funds, at least for now. But he is in Toledo awaiting payment for the sale of a picture. In spring, he sold it to a wealthy woman. I hastened along the street to find Rake, and we bought alcohol and supplies. Drinking coffee in the spotlight, I read Philip's letter again, as I would read a story in a magazine. And here's Philip, the true, impoverished artist. You see, Judith, I have but $10. This would no doubt get me to you, but there I would be confronted with a life of running rings around the figure 0, biting off little pieces from time to time as nourishment. I want so much to be with you, more to adore you, and forget such matters as the sale of pictures. It is so stupid to find oneself on hands and knees to materialism. So that's his letter. Then she writes, we started back to Salthouse in the liberal light of early afternoon, which lay laced in among the leaves of the trees and bushes in the woods. We stopped at the gin tree a moment for drinks, and then walking together with the gunny sacks over our shoulders, I was thinking, since you are beside me, this path is as it never was or ever can be hereafter. When we climbed up into the dunes, the light no longer caught in nets of trees, veneered out over the rounding hills. It seemed to be actually moving with us because we were so talkative and free. When the sun is no more than the limelight in which we bask, there is, I must say, a vanity in our happiness. Rake looked up just in time to see a gull standing still on the high air at full tilt, but didn't say a word about it. We left the light and went into the house. I looked across the rooms to the sea, which shows through the open north door like a piece of blue paper. Whenever I enter, I look there. In that tall, narrow frame at the end of the little hall, it has the clear simplicity of a Japanese print. And when there is a storm and the door is closed, I feel dangerously shut in, and the house seems blinded. I rely a great deal on that door's being open. What shall I say about Salthouse? Isolated as a ship and silent, with the living silence of an audience, though at the same time filled with the unceasing, fluid articulation of the sea, I want to say something important about it, that it has an insistence to drama, exactly in the way that with this clutter of ours, these cigarette butts, dirty beer bottles, scattered papers, unwashed dishes, and faded flowers, each object stands out in the manner of an arranged and painted still life. Even the clock lends itself to the illusion, for it has no minute hand. The commonplace is defeated here, as I have seen it defeated nowhere else except upon the stage. And there it is defeated by artful exclusions. Here by I know not what strangeness. Once across the dunes, we live in an exquisite unreality. I'm going to jump ahead and read one more part of the book. That was some of her more poetic writing about the dunes. Some of the book has the flavor of rollicking bohemian life. I'd like to give you a little sample of that. And on to Allison. So later in the book, she and Rake come into Blackwall at night. It was full darkness when we descended the last hill into Blackwall. This night, my feeling about Rake was on the point of some sort of explosive flowering, resolving into a form more recognizable than ever. As we passed the house of our host, we flung the cushion behind the hedge. Rake is idle in the instant he is off the motorcycle, and so we walked along the pier and over the gangplank of the showboat with flagrant nonchalance. I don't like people in their 30s, he confided when we had found seats with our party. They become complacent with a sort of overripe wit. Quick then, I said, let's make faces at them. We turned our heads towards people at other tables and made the worst faces we knew. And then we rose and offered our boxes of popcorn to strangers with sober, elaborate courtesy. Okay, I'm going to stop there. More happens after this as they run wild at the party and around the town. But you'll have to read the book to get the whole story.
Oh, thank you so much. Those are great passages. You know, The Exquisite Unreality is just one of my favorites. I love it so much. And as Livia was describing, she was having her journey in the library and on the board of the Provincetown Arts Press. And I will tell you a little bit more about my journey. I'll read a little bit from my afterword. And if you purchase the book, you can read it a little bit more in depth there. But I did want to mention that I grew up down south, and I grew up in a fundamentalist household. And, my husband took me to Provincetown for the first time about 10 years ago, I think. And I just, as soon as I got here, thought I had died and gone to heaven, which was, just such an amazing place, and a place I really felt the layers of myself start to unfold and kind of blossom. And eventually was able to go to the dunes and stay in Euphoria, which is one of the two shacks that Livia mentioned Hazel owned. And I live and work at a boarding school in Cheshire, Connecticut, and through a long story, which I'll shorten, I became the steward of Hazel's archive. I met her granddaughter, and her granddaughter gifted it to me, which I just still cannot believe. And this was about 4 years ago now, I think. And so I have interns at my school who work on the archive. We do this grassroots archival work. I mean, it's a jumbled mess of, it must be 50,000 papers, 100,000 papers, and it's just a jumbled mess. We go through it, and we have a lot of fun looking at these letters and stamps and all types of different things. And my students have really grown a lot in understanding of not only Provincetown, but literature and New England and what it meant to be a woman during that time and what it means to be a woman now. All my interns are female identifying. And so about 2 years ago when Livia contacted me, it was like, a magic, I couldn't believe it. Now I know it was Hazel calling us, to make this happen. And I really believe that. And so my students went about, through Livia's guidance, telling us, what we needed to do, how we needed to do it. They started to type up the book because I have in the archive the Salt House from 1934, and and there's some at the library, as Livia mentioned as well. I think 2 copies. But anyways, the copies are rare, you know, so my students were typing it up. And one thing I wanted to mention, since you talked about Philip and Rake, my students were very enthralled about this relationship, and they started doing this thing like, you know, who was on Team Rake and who was Team Philip. So if you are, you know, my age, you might remember Twilight, you know, and there was all the team this and team that. So it was kind of funny, and my students wanted to make a shirt that said Team Rake and Team Philip, but we didn't get that far. But it's just been such a wonderful experience, and every year we have an experiential learning trip. The students come here. The Peaked Hill Trust is so wonderful. They allow us to hike out to the dunes and help to close up the shacks. My students do a lot of learning during that time, not very much heavy lifting or anything, but and it's just such a beautiful experience. And I'm so grateful to Livia and to Hazel for calling us, and to Provincetown Arts Press for just all of the support that we have had over the years. And I'm just thrilled every time I pick this up. So I was gonna just read a little bit here from my afterword, which I titled Call to Salt House. Amid the holiday season of 2020, with celebrations held outdoors or in garages if one was truly fortunate, on Zoom if one was lucky, and utterly alone for most Americans, I asked my husband Doug for one thing: a book about the history of Provincetown. On this 3-mile spit of land, filled mostly with sand dunes, ponds, and forest, the town's narrow streets are crowded with 5 distinct and sometimes intersecting subcultures: Cape Cod natives, including the descendants of the historic settlers of 1620, artists and writers, the LGBTQ+ community, environmentalists, and Portuguese families traditionally involved in fishing. Seasonal visitors mingle with year-rounders who form the place's steady core. This landscape, these people, along with any transient vagabonds who take a liking to the crystal blue skies, crisp wind, and unique curve of the shoreline, create this little bold town. That December, as people milled about the streets, I was just grateful to be outside, out of my classroom and out of a mask for a few hours. Doug followed me into one of the local bookshops that existed then and asked the attendant, a local writer named Jeanette, for help. Neither Jeanette nor my husband could suspect that my life would never be the same. Jeanette showed him The Salt House, A Summer on the Dunes of Cape Cod by Cynthia Huntington. That was a book dedicated to Hazel Hawthorne. That January, as I read Huntington's memoir of 3 summers on the dunes of Provincetown, my heart memorized her lyrical language, describing bearberry plants, swallows' nests, and the path that leads to the dune shacks, where she stayed in Euphoria, a shack she rented from Hazel. In 3 short paragraphs, she recounts part of Hazel's story too. How, in 1920, during a hot New York summer, Hazel dreamed of a house on the sand, and with her husband in tow, walked from Portsmouth, Rhode Island, to the tip of Cape Cod to find it. Approaching Provincetown, they encountered a friend, Agnes O'Neill, wife of famous playwright Eugene O'Neill, in a serendipitous meeting. Huntington writes, quote, "It so happened that Agnes and Eugene O'Neill were living in the old Peaked Hills life-saving station that summer, and Agnes directed them, 'Tell Mr. Mayo, who's the skipper there, that Jean and I said you were to have one of those little cottages,' end quote. Hazel eventually bought 2 of the cottages near the station, one for $50, which she named Thalassa, and the other for $75, which she named Euphoria. The rest is history. Well, more like forgotten history. A quick Google search showed that Hawthorne's 2 published novels, Salt House in 1934 and 3 Women, 1938, were out of print and nowhere to be found. I scoured eBay, online articles, libraries, and national archives only to find mere snippets of information. Details were lacking or contradictory, yet I was increasingly intrigued. I had to find out more about Hazel Hawthorne. I was most attracted by what I began to discover was her unbridled willingness to be herself, to carve out her own life at a time when women weren't encouraged to do so. One thing seemed certain. The way the dunes had called both Hazel and Huntington, seemingly from nowhere, that exact same thing was happening to me now. I was being summoned in some way. More than anything, I needed to find Hazel's salt house. In March of 2021, I took my first hike on the dunes. Doug and I parked on the side of Highway 6 at Snell Road, where a dense growth of short, scrubby trees lined either side of a sandy path. A hawk hovered overhead and landed in one of the taller oaks as we entered. At the crest, we stood perfectly still and surveyed the environment around us. It was as though the vast landscape of the dunes had swallowed us whole. Time no longer existed. Civilization seemed to evaporate. Only the hum of a distant car reminded me that there was a town and a world of people to return to. Just skipping a little ahead. So that fall, I had 3 clear goals. 1, find Euphoria, the shack on foot. 2, obtain Salt House, some way. And 3, apply for a writer's residency on the dunes through the Peaked Hill Trust. The second week of October, Doug and I made our way back to the dunes, determined to reach Euphoria for real. Gulping for air as we hauled ourselves over dunes 1 and 2, we arrived where the path curved by the contorted tree. Here, I knew I had to pay attention to my instincts. We trekked toward the last dune that led to the ocean. Drawing on memory from the summer's dune tour, I turned left before the final rise. The path curved to the left and the right again, deep into a dune valley surrounded on both sides by Rosa rugosa bushes and greenery that clung low to the sand. As we cleared the valley, there she was, Euphoria. Standing tall, her boxy frame jutted against the October sky. She stood majestically upon the top of the dune, like a watchtower for the peaceful scene below. Later that month, back in the throes of another school year at the international boarding school where I live and work, I received a package from the Provincetown Public Library. I knew what was inside, a copy of the first, and at that time, only edition of Salt House. The library had generously loaned the book for me for my research, along with Hazel's second novel, 3 Women. Many textual connections to Provincetown are evident in the novel, including mentions of Monument Hill, Whistle Trail Path, the Beachcombers Association, Wood End, and Race Point. Descriptions of the Bohemian lifestyle, dune dweller customs, racial and sexual diversity, theater people, and Perry the bootlegger can all be pointed to as proof that Blackwall is actually Provincetown. The neighboring town Dangerfield is Churro, and Salt House is the O'Neill's summer home, the one next to the cottages Agnes O'Neill directed Hazel to in the summer of 1920. Most convincing are Hazel's own words, quote, "Oh, I did a lot of writing there. I published 2 books. One was about the dunes, Salt House. I kept a journal out there all those years. I'm sensitive about my Salt House because much of it was about my life, and people in town were scandalized. The bookstore would not sell my book," end quote. I quickly devoured all of Salt House and then 3 Women, absorbing everything about this brave woman who so loved the dunes. Hazel wasn't overstating the prickly public reception of her first novel, which reflected the morality of the 1930s and even extended to disdain in some literary reviews. The female protagonist of Salt House, Judith, is an intellectual, a writer, a woman with her own ideas. Indeed, she has 2 lovers and is accepting when she understands, towards the end of the novel, that one of them is bisexual. She rides on the back of motorcycles, drinks at a time when it is illegal to do so, and attends parties staying out late in both Provincetown and New York City. She lives on the dunes with men she is not married to and discusses communism and sex with them. A New York Times review illustrates the contempt that met Salthouse and Hazel in 1934, calling the novel, quote, a little tale, too slight and vague, rolled together, none too successfully into a story, end quote. The review goes on to say, quote, the life the book depicts is maddeningly irritating, and throughout the whole muddle one is sorry for her because she seems to be pathetically trying to live down the standards of her associates and neighbors, end quote. In Salthouse, Hazel wrote about defying societal norms. It seems she lived defying these norms as well. But these choices did not come without controversy and even punishment. Sadly, until now, Salthouse was a story mostly forgotten, misremembered or undermined in its importance. Reflecting on the book's journey into obscurity, Josephine Del Deo, another Provincetown great, writes and notes that the town librarian, quote, routinely buried it somewhere in the stacks where it could hardly be discovered by casual browsing. So disapproving was she of the contents. I know of only one person who has seen a copy of this work. However, some reference is usually made to it whenever Hazel's name comes up for discussion, end quote. Salthouse has important and historical literary implications and should not be forgotten. Like the shacks themselves, the story is a historical landmark of a mostly forgotten time. Most importantly, it is a narrative about a female protagonist by a female author that describes women's autonomy, sexual curiosity, and the will to defy societal standards. It does so through clean and austere prose that explores inner conflict and culminates in a nuanced view of self-determination, with overarching themes of sex and sexism, environmentalism and the degradation of nature, poverty and socioeconomic classism, intellect and freedom, the economy of tourism, and the protection of historical places. This book still rings true today. Hazel Hawthorne's journal-like account of a woman finding her way amid the pressures of society poses many questions that we still need answers to. Who owns the self? Who owns women and their bodies? Who owns the earth, its creatures, its seas, its dunes, its landscapes? What does being in a relationship mean for one's identity? Where does our value lie outside of societal norms? What can purposeful disobedience look like? And what sacrifices are we willing to make to find our own exquisite unreality? Thank you guys, everyone. I think we wanted to open up for questions, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know how much time we have.
You've got it.
We've got time.
Yeah. Anyone have questions they want to ask? Could you summarize when a question is asked?
Yes,
Just so we.
yes, I can.
Thank you.
Okay.
Allison, I'm just curious what the most potent or interesting thing that you found in the archive, that comes to mind when I ask that. Just like your favorite thing that you discovered when you were going through it.
Okay, that's a tough one to start with. So Kat's asking, as I've been looking through the archive, what is one of the most interesting things that I've found or my students have found, and one of my most favorite things, right? And I think that's a really hard answer.
Just pick anyone.
Okay. I will say my students were amazed by the number of stamps. There must be 300 stamps. And they're from all different countries, including countries that are no longer recognized as countries, the USSR, for example. And sometimes we had to do some investigative work to figure out where they came from. My students really liked that. I found in one of her journals a recipe for a Christmas brandy drink, and then I forced my family to drink it on Christmas. And I don't think they liked it very much. It was like a mulled cider. I thought it was great, but I think everything she did and does is great. So, And then probably one of the most important pieces is a letter from Jack Kerouac, who wrote part of On the Road in her shack. And he wrote this letter to her in defense of the National Seashore. And she used that to go to Boston, actually, to a hearing and to talk about the importance of the culture there. And one small note I want to say, in addition to that, is that, of course, On the Road is, an amazing American classic. And it was published in, I think, 1957. Does that sound right?
Right around then, I think.
And it's very much about a bohemian lifestyle on the road, which should sound very familiar, which a woman wrote in 1934. So I think that's really important to think about.
Yeah, that edition, by the way, it might be sold out again in here, but it might be, we got more coming. They've just taken, Penguin Random House has taken that and a number of other of his titles and given it kind of like what you're seeing a lot these days, the pop art treatment on the covers. It's really astounding and beautiful, and pages in as well, but in paperback, at a better price than hardback. So it's really quite amazing, what they're doing with that. You'll see some of that. Also William Burroughs, other contemporaries. They're going to be doing that treatment too, I think 7 or 8 other contemporary writers around that time and poets. So
great.
Yeah.
I saw it. Yes.
Can you expand on her circle of friends at that time? I mean, I guess it grew over the years. I guess a long time.
Hi, I'll try to answer that question. Maybe we can partner on. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes. The question is about Hazel's circle of friends, and if we could say a little bit more about that, who she knew. Yes, she did rent one of her dune shacks to Jack Kerouac at one point. As a frequent visitor to Provincetown, she summered here almost all of her life, and then around 1980, when her second husband passed, she began living here year-round. She knew lots of people here, visual artists, writers, theater people. She was very much a social animal and in the mix of Provincetown's art colony. Special friends to her were, among others, Edmund Wilson, who was a very important editor at the time. She knew E.E. Cummings, the poet, well-known poet. Trying to think who. Oh, yes. She had a very strong friendship with Franz Klein, who was a famous painter. Other people? Oh, a great friend of hers was Howard Mitchum, who is mostly known as a chef, but also wrote a well-known cookbook. I'm not sure I can name others, but it's important to know that when she wasn't here in Provincetown, she lived in Greenwich Village in New York City. And back then, maybe even more than now, there was a kind of annual migration of people between the village and Provincetown. So she also knew lots of people from New York who were up here. Oh, yes, I should mention that she knew Mary Heaton Vorse. Mary Heaton Vorse was really of an earlier generation, but one thing we found, I believe, said that Hazel babysat for Mary Heaton Vorse's kids when Hazel came here as a teenager. And the O'Neills, okay. We have speculated that Hazel came here initially in her teens. She was born in New England because Charles Hawthorne, who founded a very early art school here, was a relative of hers. That might have drawn her here. And she did do work like babysitting and got to know the town a little, which is partly why she returned later with her husband and lived on the dunes. Yes.
I just wanted to know how you found Hazel's granddaughter.
the question was, how did I find Hazel's granddaughter? Well, people who know me know that when I love something, I get very obsessive about it. And so I would spend, I was awarded a writer's residency to stay in her shack. And so my love for her just grew and grew. And I was just obsessed, and I would look on Facebook all the time. I went on all the little, Facebook subgroups and everything. And I mean, by this time, I published my first article about it. I think it was 2020, into 2022. And, I was going on Facebook all the time, and saw many times a picture of Euphoria. This was kind of common in these groups, if you've seen them before. So different Dune Shack pictures and then a picture of Euphoria. So then I read through the hundreds of comments each time, because I just no stone unturned. And it worked, because one of the comments said something kind of like, I spent so many wonderful summers with my grandmother Hazel at her shack. My heart just dropped. I mean, it really did. And so I was like, I liked the comment, and then I thought to myself, okay, if I just bombard her, she's going to be scared of me probably, So I took some time to, I don't know, a couple of hours to think about, not that long, to think about how I wanted to phrase it. And, I sent her, and actually another granddaughter had commented like, me too, underneath that. And so I sent them both a message, and I just said, I know this is probably, weird, and I'm sorry, but I just want you to know I'm very obsessed with your grandmother, and, I got to stay in her shack, and et cetera, et cetera. And Susan contacted me back, and we began to correspond through Facebook, and she would send me other photos and things like that. And then we got to meet one day at a coffee shop in Dennis, and she spent, I think, probably 3 hours telling me stories about it. And we became friends. And then she, in December later that year, gifted me the archive, which was, in her basement with lots, just like multiple, I think 6 boxes filled with papers. I just was so honored that she chose me. And she said, she really made me feel so good, because she said, as soon as she met me, she knew that she could trust me. She had a feeling that she could trust me, and I don't know why that is, but I'm so grateful. And I think she's really proud, and Livia got in contact with her through Facebook as well, right, Livia?
Yes. Do you want to tell a little bit about that?
Yes, well, actually, she was also the key person for me. Similarly, I found her on Facebook, and she was the one who told me I must contact Allison. And in fact, she helped us get in touch with each other and begin to work together. We should also mention another person who Susan, the granddaughter, informed us both about, a woman researcher from Finland, of all places, who became fascinated with Hazel Hawthorne. The woman's name is Inka Leesma, and she created a podcast called, I believe, Finding Hazel. Yes. If you Google it, you can find the podcast. She became fascinated with Hazel because she went to an art exhibit in Berlin and saw photographs of Hazel taken by Walker Evans, famous photographer. One of those photos is on the back of the book. There's a whole sequence of them by Walker Evans. They're really great.
Who was also one of her friends, actually.
True, another of her friends. She knew everyone. Yes. Anyway, Inka again began to research Hazel. Eventually came here to Provincetown, all the way from Finland. Went out on the dunes, saw the shacks, and over time put together a podcast about her whole journey of finding Hazel, finding Provincetown, and it's a really beautiful podcast, actually. If you care to listen to it, I have to recommend it.
Thanks for mentioning that.
a very long life. Did you continue to write?
See ya.
The question is, did Hazel continue to write over the extent of her very long life? Yes, she was long-lived. After writing the 2 novels, I don't think she definitely didn't publish any more book-length fiction or nonfiction. But she did publish short stories. A few of them appeared in the New Yorker, 5, I believe. Yes. And was that after, I think that went into the 40s. Am I remembering correctly? Yes. Okay. She also published over time some incidental writings, including in Provincetown Arts magazine and some other local publications. But I think, I don't really know why, I think over time her writing ambition might have faded a little. I can't, maybe, do you want to speculate? Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say she also did write reviews for other books in different papers and things like that. And she did continue to write. In the archive, there are manuscripts of other stories, of other books that she was working on. And she was a meticulous note taker and a meticulous quote gatherer, I guess I would say. And in just, I can't even emphasize how many. It's pages and pages and pages of her copying down different quotations or taking notes. And I know one of something I found very interesting is she was working on, I don't know what it is. I haven't found it in the archive. If it's there, I don't know. But I found the notes of many, many different types of roads that existed in Cape Cod, and many different histories of like the King's Highway and Highway 6 and how all these different roads came to be. So she would have, one, and it would say King's Highway and whatever material about that, and then entry number 305, see number 1, like that. It was very meticulous, and then sometimes she would sort of write in pencil on the side some commentary about a way that, like, something she had seen or something that related to her life in that way. So she did continue to write, and there are letters that I've also seen where she's in correspondence with some of the folks at the Fine Arts Work Center. And in fact, my students, they came to love this guy. His name was Bill, and he was there in the 1970s, and we have been trying to track him down, and we haven't yet, but he and Hazel carried on I think almost a decade-long friendship with these letters back and forth. And what was really special about that was my students were really able to get an insight into history in the U.S. in the 70s and mid-70s to the 80s, because as he's writing her these letters, he's talking about what's happening, what's going on, and things like that. And my students just love him. They're always like, shout out to Bill, But her correspondence was one of the types of writing that she did that was not published but was very important to her.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering if you came across any of the contemporary reviews and responses or documents somehow. That was the question, because I know we were texting each other back and forth.
I'm not sure I remember very well right now, so we might have to sorry, the question, excuse me, I should repeat the question, is can we talk a little more about any other contemporary reviews or responses to Hazel's writing? Well, in reading from your afterword, Allison, you quoted, I believe, the New York Times review. Yes, and we did collect a few other reviews, you and I, that we found online by doing some research. This is a while back now, and so it's not very fresh in my memory, except to say that none of the reviews were very positive. I think as Allison was explaining, the subject matter of the book was, in a way, ahead of its time. And reviewers, who were all men, by the way, didn't quite get how moving and interesting the story in Salthouse is. It is the story of a woman coming to realize that what's most important to her is her independence and her relationship to place more than to any one man. And it's really ultimately very moving story. They couldn't see that. Yeah. Do you want to say something more? Oh, yes.
Friends with the residents and like friends or acquaintances, not formal reviews, but did you find encouragement from the people around her and stuff? I just was curious.
Oh, that's a great question. So you're asking, even among friends, did she, like, who did she get her encouragement from? I mean, writers definitely need that. I know Livia's been great for me for that, and I appreciate that so much. Well, so the O'Neills, absolutely, especially Eugene. In the archive, we've seen some letters from him where he's sort of saying like some poetry that she had written when she was a teenager. So even before, Salt House or anything like that, and he would give her some line notes back. E.E. Cummings wrote something to her. He was concerned about her writing because she was pregnant with she was pregnant with twins. That was her 5th pregnancy, and so he was concerned about that, which I thought was very interesting as well. And I know in town, over the years, I think she sort of developed this these followers, these people who were enamored with her when they met her, and that's why I did name my afterword called To Salt House, because I think that when she was alive, she was very, she had a presence about her that captured people, and I think even now she has that presence, and so I think the encouragement went both ways, and I love to read some of the ways that other people were encouraged by her.
You answered one of my questions already about the relationship to the painter Hawthorne, so they were related in some way, and that was her first kind of like knowledge about the existence of Ptown. You said that she was friendly with Mary Heaton Vorse, and even though there's an age difference, I imagine they must have been really kindred spirits, because this sounds like the Mary Heaton Vorse story to me, what little I know of her.
Yes.
It sounds like that's her.
Yes.
So they must have been close, and she must have been an influence. Does she talk much about that, about their relationship?
I haven't found yet something where she is specifically talking about Mary Heaton Vorse. I know Inca's podcast mentions, because from some of the research that she did, mentions the relationship, and I actually know in Mary Heaton Vorse's book, A Time in the Town. The Time in the Town. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Time in the Town. Okay. She mentions Hazel. Actually, it was one of the first things I did when I bought the book. I looked in the index. I'm like, oh, she's here. And so that was early in the project. But she talked about Hazel coming over to babysit, and I imagine they must. I wish I could be a fly on the wall. I mean. It was just, and Josephine Del Deo as well, Frenchie Chanel. I mean, Hazel is somebody who has called me into this, sacred space. But there are many, many, many women who inhabited this space in the dunes, and who lived this life, and who were so brave to do that. And I assume, and I think we can see some instances in here too about ways different friends were nurturing each other as well.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that I think one thing the book demonstrates historically is that Provincetown was a place where women could come and lead a more independent existence than anywhere else. And so yes, there were people like Mary Heaton Vorse in the generation before Hazel Hawthorne who came here and carved out a life for themselves. And in the book, and I think in Hazel's actual life, this was a place where a woman like Hazel, who was divorced, not very accepted in the 1930s, could come and live an independent life. Probably harder to do, let's say, in other small towns in Massachusetts at that time, for instance. Yes.
Yeah, I want to mention we are working with the Sally Project. They reached out to us and invited us to do a reading, and so we wanted to mention the exhibit at the Mary Heaton Vorse House, because it really is all about the women on the edge. And Sasha, you can speak more about it if you want to. I don't know, but I wanted to say that the exhibit is opening August 11th. 16th, August 16th at the Mary Heaton Vorse House. You can go there and see the phenomenal work that is being displayed. And then on September the 5th, they are going to have a celebration, and they were so kind to invite us to do a little reading from Salt House as well. Is there anything else you want me to mention? Yeah, come on, come. Yes. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. This has been so fascinating. Thank you. The Sally Project travels around the country to different communities, exploring forgotten women with a focus on marginalized and communities. And so we've come to Provincetown, and we curated with the exhibition at the Mary Heaton Vorse House. And on September 5th, 4 to 6 at the Mary Heaton Vorse House, we'll have an event called Naming Sally. Sally, by the way, Sally Hemings, she's our guiding light. And we're going to be basically naming and telling stories of Provincetown forgotten women. Hazel Hawthorne, of course, is one of them. Allison, I think, is going to do a bit of a reading. And we're collecting biographies, basically, of many of these women who need to be named and, thought about. Recognize.
I thought that aligned with your question. So.
And I'm guessing that, like most events at Provincetown Arts, they can get information and tickets on the Provincetown Arts Society website to your event. Okay.
Sure. Any other questions?
I did want to ask you, based on what you were saying, do you have any plans to publish in the future the collected letters or edited letters?
So, my husband, who's a great support to me, likes to always say he doesn't want to live in my brain maybe for too long, because the dreams that I have of all the things that could come and be published just are constantly going. I would love to publish 3 women. I would love to re-release 3 women. I would love to publish some of those letters. I'm working on my own book right now, and there's just. I've even thought about how cool would a movie be about like Josephine, Frenchie, and Hazel on the dunes, right? So if you're a movie
that would
producer,
be great.
I am. Anyways, the answer is I would love to do any of those things, and so I'm just waiting for the next bit of magic to happen. It's great.
That's great. I think the letters. Obviously, I've seen a few, but you've got the whole archive. I think there's a real audience again for that. I'm one, of course, I'm immersed in books, but I'm one that loves seeing that, because I want to know, especially when you're looking at back in the time when people actually wrote actual letters, like Elizabeth Hardwick and Robert Lowell, very thick volume. I love these types of books because I really like to get into the minds of these writers, and also, like you said, looking at the times, because there's so much we think we know about history, and then we see these beautiful little pockets of resisting and living the way you want to live and not being told. And same thing, with, of course, Mary Heaton Vorse, who, used to bury money in her yard because women weren't allowed to have bank accounts back in that time. And so she was like, I'm going to do, and they couldn't own business. She's like, well, don't tell me what to do. It's just like, so I just love it. So I hope you do, among the things that you're doing, I hope maybe even a selected, edited version of letters will be published at some point, because I really think there'd be a lot of interest in that. Just as a bookseller, everybody comes here and it's so hungry for anything we can get about anybody that has lived throughout the history of Provincetown. And I just think that I'm just getting excited thinking about what could be in there, and what we might learn about other people that she was involved with, friendly with. I had heard that she had some involvement with, friendship with Helen Frankenthaler and some other painters and stuff. So, and I'd love to know more about the connection to her relative in the Hawthorne barn, because I'm there with 20 Summers about 7 weeks when they have their season there, when we're selling books there. And that's such a phenomenal facility. So I'm really curious more about that connection too. So anyway, thanks. Well, this has been wonderful. Oh, yep. Go ahead. Sure.
Supposedly she was quite instrumental, for example, in introducing John Cheever to all kinds of people.
Oh. I agree. Hence those letters. We want to get them.
I'll just say that New York was obviously a very important place in her life, and Salthouse, by the way, the novel is divided into 3 parts. The part 2 is set in New York. The main character Judith and her lover Philip go to New York to try to live there. It doesn't work out. I'll just let you know that. But Hazel herself, one thing I learned at a book launch event we did was that she lived right at the intersection of Bleecker and McDougal, in the heart of the village. Yes.
Couldn't get any better.
That's the heart of the village, yes. A gentleman at our earlier event talked about how in her later years he drove her from Provincetown back to New York and would help her go up the 4-story walk up to get to her apartment. So she was in the heart of things in the village. I don't know about her connection to John Cheever, whom you mentioned. Maybe she was. Maybe she knew him, but she did know a lot of writers both here and in New York.
Even her second husband, Morris Werner, was a writer, and actually part of the archive, he had this club that they would take, I guess she would take meeting minutes for, and so they would have this club in the village, and it was all men except for her, and one other woman was there, and they were, talking about sort of like, the events of the time, or like what was coming up. And it's very, the meeting minutes are very brief. It's kind of like, we talked about so-and-so and he didn't pay his dues and he didn't come, like that. But there was, and I'm so sorry, I know my brain is just, I hadn't thought about this for a while. It was about 2 years ago when I first found it in the archive. I don't know if Doug will help me remember, but there was a cartoonist that was in the club. No, in the Meeting Minutes Club, and I mentioned him to you, and you knew about who he was. It was his last name Kelly, like Walter Kelly is coming to my mind now. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll have to, but I can let you know through Livia, because I know you're friends with Livia. Yeah, something like that. Yes. Who was that? Pogo.
Oh, Pogo, the cartoon.
Is his name? What was his name? Walter Kelly. Walt Kelly. I was right. Wow, that's a miracle. Okay, yeah. So, that was kind of an interesting thing as well. So, random things that we find in there.
Well, wonderful. I want to thank both of you. It's brilliant. And thank the audience for coming for this event. And look forward to going to your event in September at Provincetown Arts Society. Yeah. Thank you very much. If you want a book, we've got them inside.